LOTRO's newest raid, Gwathrenost, the Witch King's Citadel, has been out for a few days now. You can play this raid on Tier 1 and Tier 2 currently, and I thought I would just make a basic guide for how to complete Tier 2 of the newest raid in LOTRO. Before going into the instance, you can now get a weekly quest from Gurkrak in Baal Avark. Simply go to Gurkrak, pick up the raid, Gwathrenost, the Witch King's Citadel weekly. Some pretty nice rewards, embers, some runes, and 3 crimson thistles, and virtue XP for just completing the raid every week. This quest is currently unshareable, but for a future patch that should be fixed, so you can share the weekly just as you could with the Hidden Horde weekly. Now, in order to discover this raid, you simply just have to go to Baal Avark. Most people should already have it discovered, since it's the same discovery as the 6-man and the 3-mans. And once you enter this raid, you arrive outside the big citadel of the Witch King. In the beginning of the raid, you have Kana, who has the progression quest that remembers your progression. It seems a bit buggy now, but for a future patch, it should be working pretty well. Basically, it means that if you pick up this quest, you kill boss 1 and boss 2, then you can come back with this character and then go to boss 3. So think of this quest as like a checkpoint saver. Now, as you can see, the start of the raid is leading up this path. There's a bunch of ads. And from this point on, I'm just going to switch to a VOD from my raid that I streamed. And we can then look at that raid. And I'll try to explain the most basic things about how to beat this raid. Alright, here we go. This is footage from my raid that I did the other day on stream. To be honest, on Tier 2, the trash pulls aren't really that hard. We look at some of the ads we have. We have, of course, big trolls to fight. There's an overseer, there's warriors, and there's hunters, I believe. The archers standing out. Basically, to explain these mechanics briefly, the trolls will put a corruption that reduces incoming damage and increases outgoing damage. And these warriors will put up a reflect corruption, just like the orc warriors in Hidden Horde. And typically you want to kill the Overseer first because he will buff his allies. The trash pulls typically aren't really that hard in this raid, which I do find kind of refreshing. Just keep an eye out for the reflect on the warriors. At least for Tier 2, the archers don't really do that much. We have yet to see something like Killshot. So typically in this raid you can pull like 2 groups at a time quite comfortably if you have a decent group. And just AoE everything down. Just be aware of the corruptions. Basically, for trash pulls, if you do remove a lot of corruptions, it gets a lot easier. You might also notice these green puddles. They will actually heal the enemies, so it's important that when you see these puddles, just drag the mobs out of it so that they don't heal while you're killing them. And these puddles, I believe the healing puddles are put down by the Curse Shatters. You can see one all the way down here at the bottom. So just simply take the ads out of the puddles. And then you just continue pulling the ads, same types of ads that we've seen, not really that difficult. Watch out for the reflect, kill the overseer, get corruptions of the ads, move out of the healing puddles, move out of the disease puddles as you see here. Just stay clear of puddles, keep corruptions off the targets, and you should be fine. You can see the reflect on the fighters right now. I might have said that the warriors have reflect. It looks like the fighters actually are the reflecting ones. Just keep an eye out for the reflect. Don't do what Fapolina did here and kill yourself to reflect, but rather just keep corruptions off the mobs. Obviously the reflect is also a corruption you can just remove and then DPS freely. But the trash pulls towards boss 1 are pretty straightforward. Speaking of boss 1, Gurkrak is the first challenge that you face in this instance, and he summons a couple of ads. There's some falling debris mechanic. But basically, I would advise just tank the boss in the middle of the gate here where you start, because the ads will spawn in this area. And you can just target the ads real quick and still kind of hit the boss. When it comes into the tank mechanic of Gurkrak, he will do a frontal application about every 20 seconds or so. And it's just like a Rakutha's from Throne, where you get the hemorrhage bleed and it tears up. And if you go beyond tier 5, you will get one shot. So it's important to have a tank that maybe swap aggro at tier 2 or tier 3, and that mechanic should be fine. Just make sure whoever is tanking the boss is standing alone, because the application of the hemorrhage bleed is frontal in front of the boss. So if 2 tanks are standing together, then they will both tier up if they're standing in front. So just to show that hemorrhage bleed, you can see our tanks kind of make a tiny error here. They're both standing in front currently, and they both get tier 1 of the hemorrhage, when typically you just want that on one of your tanks and then switch. His first mechanic to look out for is the thundering blows that he does. It's a long grey bar induction, and as you can see it starts around 90% I believe. And basically what this does is it will target 4 people in your raid, and those 4 people will get debris to fall down on them, and it will deal damage to the people who get hit by it. This mechanic is easily avoidable. These circles, as you can see, they spawn right here. And those 4 people, if you notice who they are on, they can just stay out of the group. Like stay on the left side, just avoid, leaving the group to be in the middle to be free to do what they want. I believe one of the circles is on this RK healer. So the idea would be then that the RK would just stay on the side and dodge by himself, meaning the group would not be impacted. So instead of what we're doing right here, we're kind of like wildly running around, everyone's running around. Instead, you can try to notice who has free and try to have those people just stay out of the group. But this mechanic is pretty avoidable. You just simply move from the circle once they appear. Next mechanic after this thundering blows, 75%, we get the 2 Crajon Menders, which do a induction where they heal the boss. And this can also be interrupted with an interrupt, and then you just kill these ads. So at this point you can either AoE them down or just simply target them real quick. They die pretty quickly in tier 2, and then back on the boss. So those are pretty much all the mechanics in this fight. The hemorrhage bleed to manage for the tanks, the ads that spawn, and the thundering blows. Other than that, there's not really any major mechanics. There are some effects, such as this poison that we're getting, but if you have a berg, it's easily clearable. As you can see, there's some puddles as well you should stay clear of. But other than the poison, you can see a punt right there. He does like a smash in the ground, but it's nothing major. There's some poisons and some fear effects that you should clear and pot in the group. Other than that, it's basically kill the ads, and thundering blows, as you can see, happens around 30% as well. Or it could be timed, I'm not sure. And it seems like we faced him past his thunderous blows. But it's thundering blows, there's some ads to kill. You want to interrupt these ads because they heal the boss. You can see he got healed up a little bit. And our tank just took tier 5 of the bleed and he got one shot, so watch out for that. So this first boss is pretty straightforward. You have poisons, you have fears, you have the hemorrhage bleed to manage as your tanks, and the thundering blows and ads. Pretty straightforward boss 1 of tier 2 in Gwathrenost. And once we enter the castle, there's more trash pulls to clear on the way to boss 2. So you just simply clear your way forward until you get to this room, and from this point, try not to pull stuff on the side rooms. When you get here, you want to just clear these ads in the middle and then go left. You can see there's a new ad in the group, the Duvardian Oathsworn. There's a Venom Master, Death Caller, Priestess. The first target should always be the Oathsworn. They reduce the incoming damage of allies, and I believe they also might buff their allies. Always try to kill the Oathsworn first, and then kill the rest of the ads. Other than that, just try to keep corruptions of the ads, and watch out for any puddles that might spawn, and you should really be fine with these trash pulls. And once you clear these trash, obviously we came from the entrance from the left side of the screen currently. You move up, forward, and then you go left into this side room here. This is where there's like a little bit of a gauntlet. So you step inside of the gate. Make sure everyone's inside before you start this gauntlet, because these doors will close. Once you're all inside, you can start heading up. And if you feel fairly confident in your group, you can actually run all the way upstairs to the top and pull all the ads. There's like probably like 20, 30, 40 ads in total, but none of them are really that damaging. So what we're doing right here is just running all the way up to the top. Make sure if you're the tank to do some aggro stuff while running up. And just like before, just try to make sure corruptions are off of most of the targets. And AoE and nuke everything down. Should be fine. I also believe that the sorcerer ad does some reflect. So make sure the sorcerers have their corruptions taken off. So you can either do this or you can clear it slowly. But you simply run up to the top, clear these ads, and that will take you to boss 2. Boss 2, the Castellan Obashurz, is also pretty straightforward, I would say. There's also a tank swap mechanic here, where you probably should swap aggro at 2 or 3 of the tier of the tank buster mechanic. There's gonna be a hide mechanic, where there's a fear or something. You can run behind these pillars, stand and hide, so you don't get feared and take damage. There's gonna be some ads, there's gonna be some puddles, but I thought I would just play this boss fight and we can just look at some of the mechanics. Obviously, in the beginning, when the fight starts, you just DPS at the boss down. At 90% is the first ad mechanic. The boss will, pretty soon into the fight, he will do a fear attack. As you can see, Eggwall, our tank, now has a tier 1 of the debuff, and I would recommend switching aggro from the tanks at tier 2 or tier 3, so you don't take too much damage as a tank. You can see that the fear is a timed event, 1 minute 10 seconds, so 70 seconds for the fear of the dark. And basically, when this happens, fear of the dark, you want to run behind the pillars to hide. At the end of deduction, if you're not hiding behind the pillars, you're going to get feared and you're going to take damage, and that's not something you want. Another tip for this fear of the dark is that if your DPS is good enough, you can typically face him through to his next mechanic, so he will cancel the fear. The first ad mechanic is at 90%, so at this point we just DPS nuke through this. As you can see, as soon as it hits 90%, he cancels the fear, and we get the first type of ads, the Oathsworn Attendants, coming in. The boss puts up a shield while these ads are alive, so obviously you want to kill these ads. They put up damage reducing corruptions, I believe. But simply bundle up these ads, AoE and nuke them down. You have 2 tanks, just make sure you pick up those ads and everybody focus those ads down. And then you can go back onto the boss. So as we can see here, we're just picking up all the ads, grouping them up, killing them. When they die, they will drop green puddles that actually do damage to the player if you stand in them. But they also actually increase the damage the boss will take if you keep him in those green puddles. They don't last that long, but once you kill these ads, I would recommend try to keep this boss in these puddles as long as you can before they disappear. So the tank should just stand at the edge of the puddle and keep the boss in this puddle. Now, the second ad mechanic that the boss will do, I believe, 75%, 50%, and 25%. He will do a ritual of rebinding. This is pretty much the same mechanic as in Sargeworn, where those flickering lights slowly try to move to the boss to buff his damage and heal him. And on tier 2, this is pretty straightforward as well. The unbound spirits, you just simply DPS them before they reach the boss. And once you kill these spirits, you will just simply have to wait for the induction to finish before you can continue the fight. You can see that we managed to kill all the spirits in time. Now we're just simply waiting for the gray bar to finish so we can continue the fight. Right now we're going to DPS the boss. You can see he has a corruption. Remove that corruption. He does fear of the dark, and we actually tried to run and hide for this, but we didn't have to, as 65% was the next Oathsworn ads, and we once again canceled his fear effect. And this is just rinse and repeat at this point. DPS AoE nuke down the ads, keep corruptions off, and when they drop the green puddles, keep the boss in those puddles. And once again we hit 50% for the next ritual, kill the spirits, wait for the gray bar to finish, back to the fight, keep DPSing the boss. He once again does the fear of the dark. This time I think we actually run to hide and the effect goes off. You see this player didn't quite make it in time, so they get feared and they take some damage. So once you hide, back into the fight, 40% for the next ads. Same thing, bundle up the ads, kill the ads. And once the ads are dead and you get to 25%, it's the last ritual phase. Kill those lights again, kill the spirits. I think at this point we let one of the spirits get into the boss, so he healed a few percent. But once the ritual is done, you go back to DPSing. There's another fear happening. You go and hide. Make sure we don't get the fear effect. Another point for the hide. You're only safe from the hide if you see this icon that I have on my character. That means that you're safe when you're hiding. If you don't see that, you're not safe. Hide from the fear, and then the end is pretty much nuke the boss down. He will do a hope wipe at 20%. You can see everybody lost their hope, so you have to repop hope at 20%. The boss also get a damage buff at the end of his health, I believe, a little enrage. But all in all, this boss fight is pretty straightforward, It shouldn't be that hard on tier 2. There's also one thing I forgot to mention. Some people might get a purple eye. I believe you get punted or you get pulled and then you'll have a purple eye. It'll take for 8 seconds, and when it finishes, it'll do AoE damage around that person. If you get that purple eye, just stay out of the group until the purple eye disappears, then return to the fight. The boss 2 of Gwathrenost is also pretty straightforward as well. After finishing this fight, you get your reward, and to move forward in the raid, you head forward here in this path and then another set of stairs to climb to the next boss. Now for these ads, I would recommend doing at most 2 pulls at the same time, 2 groups. Either 1 group at a time or 2 groups at a time. There's going to be some Allsworns that you want to focus on first, but these trash pulls in general are also pretty straightforward. And once you reach the top and kill the ads, this door will open. There's more ads. The path to move forward from this point is forward to the center and then head right. The next boss is to the right. There's more ads. There's kind of a lot of Allsworns, so you want to like maybe try to go slow here, pull an Allsworn at a time. And if you happen to pull more, maybe try to pull an Allsworn out of the group to DPS it outside of the group so it takes more damage. And then you head to the right once you get into the room. After you kill these ads, the door should open towards boss 3. And once again, the trash pulls aren't really that hard, so it should be pretty straightforward. This takes us to boss 3, which is the High Chieftain Claghord, the man, and I think her name is Asachal or something. Yeah, High Priestess Asachal or Asachal. The beginning of this fight is only with the man and some ads, so I'm just going to go through this fight and explain it as it goes along. First off, when it comes to the tanks, same as before, you have a tank buster mechanic. You want to swap at tier 2 or tier 3 so you don't take too much damage. My recommendation is to take this the boss and tank him by the ramp back here. Whoever is tanking the boss, make sure we get the interrupts and remove corruptions from the boss. He will put up a healing corruption, and he will also do some inductions that you need to interrupt. But I'm just going to play this and we'll see exactly what happens. Another thing this boss will do, he will do like a frontal cleave, a gray bar. Once that happens, if you're tanking him, just step through him, let him finish that cleave, and then step back in front. If you get hit by that cleave, you take more damage, so that's something you want to avoid. I'm just going to play this. As you can see, we tank the boss, and we're slowly just going to move him back to the ramp. The reason we're moving him back here is to keep this area clear for the ads. 90% on the boss, we get the first set of ads. Now on tier 2, these ads pulls are actually pretty, I would call them pretty easy. Just bundle everything up. The second tank who doesn't have the boss just bundles everything up and you AoE and nuke everything down. Just keep corruptions, get interrupts, and these ads are pretty easy. Kill order largely doesn't matter. Have the group focus the same targets. Kill these ads, and then you return to the boss. So we kill those ads pretty quickly. The next threshold for this boss is 70% for more ads. So you simply just do the same thing. Have one tank and bundle everything up. In this trash pool we have 2 Allsworns, but you can simply just once again bundle everything up and AoE and nuke everything down. So on tier 2 at least, these trash pools are pretty straightforward. Just bundle everything up and DPS them down. Once the ads are dead, you return to the boss. As you can see, the boss actually healed, so our tanks failed to remove the corruption in time. The Executioner Strike is the gray bar I was talking about, the frontal that you need to avoid. And don't do what happened here. You can see our tanks got out of the way in time, but they're too slow to move back. So the boss actually frontals the group and puts the tank buster mechanic on a lot of people because it's frontal application. But at this point, once you clear the 90% and 70% ads, this boss is really easy. Just DPS him down until 40%. He will green bar, and there's about a minute and a half of RP here until the fight restarts. And at that point, we're going to have 2 bosses in the fight. The woman will join the fight. And when this fight restarts, you now have 2 bosses in the fight. You want 1 tank each to grab one, and you want to split them apart. As you can see, they have a shield around them. When they're close, they protect each other. So you need to split them apart. And the idea here is just to finish off the man. He has 40% left. Just kill the man before you move on to the woman. And there's not really a lot of mechanics until you move to the woman. But the one mechanic that will start happening as soon as the woman is active is a mechanic called Blood Boil. 4 people will periodically get Blood Boil applied to them. And it takes for 8 seconds. And at the end of those 8 seconds, you will drop a puddle. Now these puddles I would just recommend if you're the person with the Blood Boil. As soon as Blood Boil happens, you know you have 8 seconds until it drops. And when there's like 3 seconds left, I would simply just move to the side of the room somewhere. For example, up here or down here. And just drop the puddle and return to the fight. As soon as you get Blood Boil again, you can then just simply go to this puddle and drop it on top of that puddle again. So you could possibly have all 4 Blood Boil targets just drop on the same place, as the puddles don't really do initial damage, but rather damage over time. So if you just go there at the end of the Blood Boil, which is 8-second durations, when you have 3 or 2 seconds left, step into the puddle that's already there, and just stack the puddles together over here. Or you could just have each player just individually move and drop the puddles just off to the side somewhere. Blood Boil will always happen on the same 4 people, unless one of those people die, then I believe it does shift to someone else randomly. But while killing the man in the beginning, of course, there's a tank buster mechanic here. The woman and the man will have each their tank buster. So for higher tiers where they have more morale, you probably would have to switch aggro now and then. But at least for tier 2, you should be able to kill the man before swapping aggro. So while killing the man, the only mechanic to look out for is Blood Boil. Just gonna go ahead and play this for a bit. You can see that we're splitting up the twins. As soon as they're split up, you just focus down the man. And you can see what's happening right here. 4 people are getting the puddles. I am actually one of them. You can see the icon up here is Blood Boil. So at the end of the 8-second duration, you're going to drop a puddle. So I just step to the side. And as soon as my puddle drops, I move back into the fight like this. There's also power drain. The red wound is a power drain, so you should clear that. But at this point, you simply DPS and kill the man. Still get the Blood Boil, as you can see. And you'll notice that I stay here for a while, and when I have like 2 seconds left, I go and drop it on top of the original puddle. You can just keep stacking them in the same place. Now, the man is dead. We're now on the High Priestess. So what are the mechanics to look out for here? Of course, as you can see, we still have the Blood Boil. Puddles you want to drop off to the side. But other than that, what other mechanics are there? So, the woman, 80%, 60%, 40% are ad phases. 75%, 50%, and 25%. You will do a pull. And she will do a damage burst on everyone with fire from below. So I will show exactly what happens with that. Once we get to 80%, we get new ads. You also need to be wary that she is probably going to bleed out until 75%. So you might get the pull and the fire from below during the ad phase. We'll see if that happens here. I don't quite remember. But when it comes to the ads, the first 2 ad waves are also pretty straightforward. Bundle everything up, keep corruptions off, and AoE and nuke the ads down. You still have the Blood Boil puddles to deal with. You can see puddles are ticking. I actually didn't notice, so I kind of dropped mine in the center. Try to avoid dropping puddles in the middle. Try to keep them on the side, and you can have the fight in the center. And when it comes to the pull, we actually do get pulled because the boss gets bled down to 75%. And the pull is simply a single pull towards the boss. So in order to be safe from not being pulled into the lava on the side, you want to be standing pretty much here in front. So she pulls her towards her and you kind of hit the ramp. The pull is about to happen right now, and you can see she's going to pull me towards her. So I'm fine. I get yanked over here. The worst position to be for the pull is probably like, you know, on her left or on her right. So if you're standing here, you're going to get pulled, whoop, right into this lava over here. I do believe we actually lose 1 member to this pull. One of our tanks was not positioned correctly. As a tank, you should try to be in front of the boss, so you would get pulled towards the shard here in the middle, and you'll be safe. Standing anywhere to the side will make you get pulled through her and then yoinked off to the side probably. And you can see after every pull, she does a gray bar induction. I will burn you to ashes. And pretty much at the end of the induction, everybody will take fire damage, and if you're standing close to people, you share that damage. So the idea here is to spread out, as you can see that we're doing. At the end of the induction, whoosh, everybody takes damage from fire. So the idea is just to spread out and take that hit, and then back to the fight. So that will happen at 75%, 50%, and 25% from the woman, where she will do the pull and then do the fire from below. So that's something to remember. Adds are 80%, 60%, and 40%. So we simply just clear the 80% adds until they're dead. There's still gonna be blood boil that you need to drop your puddles on the side. That's continuously through the fight. Once the 80% adds are dead, you return to the woman, take her down to 60%, you get more adds. Same thing, just group them up, bundle them up, AoE and nuke everything down. It's pretty straightforward. And then once again, when the woman gets to 50%, she's gonna do a pull and then the fire from below. I think something happened here that we cancelled that mechanic, but it should happen at 50% as well, where you get pulled and the fire from below. So the next thing to worry about after that, 40% is more adds. You will kind of a green bar here, and then it'll take like 10 to 20 seconds. And those statues on the walls on the side, the gargoyles, will actually come to life. So the gargoyles will spawn at one of these pillars you can see on the right and the left, and the back left and the back right will have one gargoyle each to spawn. And that's the 40% add wave. 4 gargoyles, they do frontal damage. So the idea, at least what we've been doing, is having the group stack here at the edge of the arena and having whoever's tanking it just hold it here by the shard. Here you can see the gargoyles entering the fight. 1, 2 from this side, and then on the other side it's the same view of the gargoyles. The idea is for the tank to pick them up and bundle them up here, AoE nuke everything down. They have damage reducing corruptions. And the deadliest attack they actually do is they actually do a wing buffet, similar to what Fremel will do with the frontal punt. It's an induction that can be interrupted with a normal interrupt, so save your interrupt skills to make sure we don't get punted. But the reason why we keep this tank on this shard here in the middle, if it happens that a punt goes off, all goes well, the tank should get punted just into the shard and not off the map. It's also important that the tank keeps aggro, because if you lose aggro and the adds turn to the group, and if a wing buffet goes off, then boof, we get punted off into the lava and we die. And as always, whoever's tanking the boss, make sure we always interrupt the horrify induction. If she gets horrify off, then everybody gets feared. You get turned around, feared, and you just run into the lava and you just wipe, pretty much. But I'll just play this and you can see how this works. The tank will pick up these adds. The Drusogs, as you can see, they get some corruptions, but the idea is just to AoE nuke them down and be ready to interrupt if they do an induction. We actually did get hit by Horrify, we didn't get that interrupt, and we get feared, as you can see. Feared, and boom, that's pretty much a wipe. So, on our next attempt, let's see. Same thing here, the gargoyles or the Druzog come down, AoE nuke, make sure the tanks keep aggro. Keep them turned away from the group. You can see we have some adds in the group. That's the wing buffet. We do get the interrupt so no one gets punted. That's a really important interrupt to get. There's still the blood boil, as I said, throughout the fight. Another wing buffet almost going off in the group, but we get the interrupt. But you can see the idea is the tank keeps the adds and just AoE and nuke them down. Once these adds are dead, the fight is pretty much over, I would say. The next mechanic that will happen is 25% is another pull and fire from below. But other than that, it's just DPS are down until she's dead. You can see here the pull happening and then spread out for fire from beyond. And that's pretty much the fight. DPS are down until she's dead. No more real mechanics to look out for at this point. That's pretty much boss 3 in a nutshell. Easily doable if you have the right ideas and the right strategies. And killing boss 3 will make this shard glow, and that's how you start boss 4. Alright, so boss 4. Pretty straightforward fight actually. When you start the fight, you spawn the shard of Tauressar, which is the last boss. And the shard of Tauressar has a pretty huge frontal, so as a tank you need to be careful with the positioning of the boss. The boss also has a tank buster mechanic, I would recommend switching at tier 2, 3 or 4. This at the bottom is the tank buster mechanic for the shard. Corrupting influence will reduce your shadow mediation and incoming healing, so it's important that the tanks swap this. There's also something called Rain of Splinters, tier 1, that will keep tearing up throughout the fight. It's a soft enrage mechanic that every member in the raid will get, and you'll tear up and take more and more damage as the time goes on. So other than that, big frontal, tank buster mechanic, and the boss will also drop puddles. And when it comes to like positioning and how to utilize the rooms, there's still some debate on how you should be doing this. I personally like using the back area because we get the bridge. I like using this area here for the shard because the shard will drop puddles. You can just keep backing up as a tank, just use all this space to move the boss around. When it comes to the bosses, big mechanics, 50% is the first big mechanic. So when we get to 50%, we're gonna get adds. And just like the previous fight on boss 3, these adds are 4 of the gargoyles. So we pretty much do the same thing here. One tank just stays with the shard over here, and the other tank deals with the Druzog over here. And we just do the same thing as before. Get corruptions, AoE nuke everything down. There's also periodically a puddle applied to some people. As you can see, the person on the bottom left here dropped a puddle. It's kind of unclear exactly what these puddles do. They don't seem to do much. But in any case, just to be safe, whoever gets the eye and the puddles, just go out of the group, drop them, and return to the fight. So we got 4 Druzog once again, and you simply just do the same thing, AoE nuke them down, get the interrupt if they do a wing buffet, and it should be relatively straightforward. Once you defeat those Druzog, you return to the boss, and the next mechanic is at 20%. And when it comes to the boss, I believe the boss also does like a 360 distributed. It's possible on higher tiers that the group actually needs to be closer than we do on tier 2. There's also a punt, which I believe is a frontal punt. Gotta be careful with that. But once we hit 20%, it's the next mechanic that happens. The twins actually come back to life, Claghord&Asachal. Now when it comes to dealing with this, what we've figured out for now at least, what's best, whoever has the shard will taunt Asachal and keep the shard and Asachal while the group deals with Claghord. So obviously they get the shield if they're close together. So the tank with the shard pulls the woman and we just simply DPS Claghord down. Since the woman is alive again, there's going to be a blood boil on 4 people. As you can see, the puddles are back as long as she is alive. But this part is pretty straightforward. DPS Claghord down, Claghord dies. Whoever was tanking Claghord, I would recommend that person to just taunt the woman over here and then just kill the woman. And once she is dead, the fight is pretty much over. You return back to the shard and you have 20% left kill on the shard. And from this point, there's not really anything major happening. So as soon as the twins are dead, back to the boss to DPS it down until the boss is dead and you have completed the raid. That's pretty much it, pretty straightforward. That's for a tier 2 basic guide. Fights are pretty basic. If you have like the base strategy nailed down, they're pretty straightforward and I would say relatively easy if you know what you're doing. But I figured I would just make a basic guide to help people out doing this raid on lower tiers. Obviously we're getting tier 3 on this coming Wednesday, but this was my basic guide for tier 2 Gwathrenost. If you have any questions, go ahead and ask me in the comments. I'll try to reply as best as I can. I hope you enjoyed this basic guide and hopefully groups will have an easier time getting their Gwathrenost completions. Hey! Hey you! Yeah, you. What do you want? You enjoy my content and you want to support me? Fine, I'll show you how you can do it. I would really appreciate if you like the video and subscribe to my channel. You can also support me through my Ko-fi homepage. If you're playing or looking to play Lord of the Rings online, there is one place you need to be. The Ghyniverse! The Ghyniverse is a Discord server created for the community of the players of Lord of the Rings Online. The server is getting close to 7,000 members, and in this server you'll find tons of helpful information. There's monthly giveaways, easy access to patch notes, you can keep up with my YouTube videos, my streams. If you're a streamer, you can ask for the streamer role and you can announce your streams in the other stream channel. There are discussion channels for pretty much everything, every class, monster players. But the best thing about this server is probably the Gearing Resources tab, where you can find anything from trait lines for every class, every build. There are stat goals, where you can find out what stats you should aim for on your characters. Really helpful information about drop rates from instances, as well as screenshot from all the new loot that appears in the game. If you enjoy LOTRO, you should definitely consider joining this server, and hopefully I'll see you in Middle-earth. If you were part of the Ghyniverse already, you might have noticed that another tab appeared at the top, the LFF server. This server is a brand new server that I created, the LFF Ghyniverse. In this server you can select which servers you want to keep up with, and once you select your server, say you select Arkenstone, you will see the LFF, the kinship advertisement, looking for kinship and trade channels, and there's also voice channels if people want to use those. The LFF channel is basically a looking for fellowship channel where people can post if they need players for the runs, and this way people don't have to be logged into the game to see the chat, they can just instead get a notification on their Discord. There's also a kinship advertisement page where kins can post their kinship advertisement and have people join their kins, and you can also post in the looking for kinship chat if you're looking for a kinship, but make sure to take a look in the kinship advertisement first and look through all the kin to find a suitable kin for you. There's also a trade channel if people want to buy or sell stuff that you can use. Hopefully you'll consider joining this server to bring the community even more together, not just in the game, but also outside of the game.